I was westbound on I-80 cutting across Wyoming after midnight. Light freight in a tailwind, planning to shut down in Rawlins. The radio was on 19 like always half company habit, half keeping myself awake with weather and mile marker chatter. Just past midnight, a voice said my handle exactly how I say it. Same rhythm, same lazy R I don't notice until I hear a recording of myself. "Caleb, you got a copy?" the voice said, then repeated it with my timing, like it was playing me back. I keyed up and asked who had the joke. Nothing came back but the hiss of range and a faint click like someone unkeyed a hand mic against their teeth. A minute later, the way station sign flashed. Open. I rolled in. The lane speaker crackled, and the inspector said my unit number with the stress wrong, like he'd only seen it typed. "Driver, pull around to lane 3. I did. The scale showed me clean. When I stopped at the window, the guy inside looked surprised to see me at all. He hadn't called me by number. "Speaker's been weird," he said. "Sometimes it catches a bleed." He stamped me and waved me on. Back on 80, I dialed down the squelch to cut static. A pickup with no lights drifted down the on-ramp, ran parallel in the merge lane, then tucked behind me at 2-car distance. No headlights for a full 5 count, then on. I tried not to linger on that. My company handset UHF, not CB, crackled with a joined tone like someone probing. It happens when a driver forgets to log out and bleeds their yard channel onto the road. Except the display showed an unauthorized ID, then another, then 3 failed auth attempts. I thumbed the power and killed it. Just past mile 219, I pulled into a wide turnout to check my straps and see if the pickup would follow. He went by slow enough that I saw a magnetic antenna puck and a light bar dark on his roof. Not law. Not a pilot car either. No flags, no placard. He took the next exit. I breathed through my nose and got moving again. Past Sinclair, 19 woke up. Someone hummed "Happy Birthday" into an open mic and let it ride for a while. Then keyed off, then keyed on again, like they wanted to hold the channel and hear who got angry. I stayed off. At 0047, the voice with my handle came back. "Caleb, you still westbound? You should take Fort Steele Road if you want the shortcut." That road is a frost-heaved nightmare that loops back to nowhere. I keyed up and said I'd stick to the slab. The voice whistled one note and cut. A mile later, a flashlight beam licked up from the ditch on my right and painted my trailer for half a second. Rawlins was thick with reefers and oilfield rigs. I idled through the truck stop rows, found a gap near the back fence, and set the brake. Before I killed the CB, I heard my own laugh, my exact throwaway laugh I do when I'm done talking, play back half a second off. It's like hearing your echo from a canyon you can't see. I did a walk around, checked my locks, then slid into the sleeper. At 0311, 3 light taps on the fairing behind the cab. Not a fist, fingertips. I held still and listened for footsteps on gravel. None. I cracked the curtain and looked through the driver's mirror. A silhouette crouched behind my trailer tires, too close to catch with the dome light. I hit the key fob and laid on the horn hard. The figure flinched and went under the landing gear, then disappeared between rows. A minute later, the pickup I'd seen earlier rolled past the end of the lane with its lights off, then on, then gone. In the morning, I found a chalk slash on my right front trailer tire and a cheap Bluetooth tracker stuck to the frame with a magnet the size of a coin. The chalk wasn't a tire text mark. It was a "this one" mark. The tracker was still warm in my palm. I dropped it in the trash can inside the fuel island and watched the can long enough to feel stupid. That day, I kept a steady 2-car gap in my mirrors. A black SUV held distance, never passing, never falling back, like someone learned to wear the exact same pressure I keep on folks when I'm tired. I turned off at a little exit with no fuel and parked at a closed way station. The SUV floated past and kept going. 10 minutes later, the CB clicked, and a voice that had been practicing said, "You missed your turn." I drove the rest of my miles with the company radio off and 19 up just high enough to catch weather. Nobody at the shop found anything else on the truck. No cameras saw anything useful. It writes in a log as suspicious activity, no contact. But I know the sound of my own laugh. It shouldn't talk back to me from a ditch or a lane speaker, and it shouldn't learn my pace in under a night. I shut down at mile 214's rest area because my hours were gone and the temperature in the box needed nursing. It was one of those half-moon lots with a bathroom in the middle and picnic tables no one uses after dark. I backed into a slot against the grass so my passenger side faced the sidewalk and my driver's side had the lane. It's habit. I want an escape lane and I want a wall where I sleep. At 03:10, 3 light knocks tapped the sleeper wall from the outside spaced, polite like housekeeping. I froze and counted to 6, then felt the truck shiver in a way you feel through the mattress when someone shifts their weight on the step. I reached for the air horn cord and gave it a quick bump. Out the mirror, nothing. The bathroom was a rectangle of sodium light and moths. My neighbor 2 slots down had their curtains shut and a blue TV glow across the glass. I slid into the seat and lit the yard with my headlights. The beams caught a stripe on my tire sidewall. Not a gouge, a chalk mark like a diagonal tally. On the frame by the cross member, a tiny black pebble that wasn't there yesterday. I popped it loose with a glove and felt the weak tug of a magnet. It was a tracker, the generic kind you see in ads where a guy saves on insurance by watching his teen's car. It blinked once when I turned it in my hand. I shut it in my microwave to kill the signal and sat with the engine idling too high. I called the non-emergency number for the highway patrol and told them I had an attempted tag and a person on foot in the lot. The dispatcher asked if I was in immediate danger. I said no. She suggested I move to a fuel stop with cameras and stay on the line if the person returned. While I was still talking, a black SUV eased past the entrance, paused long enough to read plates, and rolled on. I gave the partial. I pulled out and nosed across the lot toward the car side to see if anyone would follow. The SUV reappeared on the frontage road and matched my pace for 3 driveways. When I turned right to loop back to the interstate, it turned left like it didn't want to make it obvious. In my mirror, it kept the classic 2-car gap and never let itself be behind me at the light, only beside or ahead, which is a tell if you're watching for tails. Back on 40, I set cruise at 63 and watched the dotted lines as a metronome. The SUV hovered back there, sometimes a different shape sedan, crossover, same distance. At the next big exit, I used the truck stop entrance and took the way station service lane instead, cutting behind the scale house and parking on the shoulder of the inspection bay. There's a camera there that makes people nervous. The tail floated by and didn't turn in. I sat with my windows cracked an inch, the way you leave them when you want to hear feet before you see faces. At dawn, I checked my passenger window. A palm print bloomed in the dew-wet lines where fingers had pressed and then lifted. Not a full hand, just the heel and 2 fingers. On the trailer skirt, 2 tiny crescents of rubber where someone had braced a knee to look under. On the battery box strap, I found a faint smear of chalk like they'd dragged the same piece they'd marked the tire with. I dropped the tracker at the sheriff's substation on my way out of the county. The deputy behind the glass raised his eyebrows and said they'd been seeing more of them in the last 6 months, sometimes on high-value boxes, sometimes on guys who run the same lane every night. People learn your rhythm, he said. Don't gift it to them. That afternoon, the CB lit up with someone keying over other people and practicing names. Mine came out once, a hair off. I didn't answer. I talked to my dispatcher about varying fuel stops and sleeping on scales when they're open. It's not a story with a plate and a pair of cuffs at the end. It's 3 knocks, a chalk line, a coin-sized magnet where it shouldn't be, and the feeling of a vehicle you've never met choosing the same distance as you like all day. I run solo, leased on, pulling a dry van. That night I was eastbound on I-40, light wind and a clean clock, planning to shut down past Amarillo. I'd just come off a long climb, cruise set at 62, when two guys in reflective vests stepped out near the bottom of an on-ramp and waved me over like they owned the shoulder. There were 3 cones in a triangle that made no sense too tight to protect anybody. Too far from the pickup they'd parked to nose out. The truck was gray with "dot" stenciled on the door in a font that looked like someone picked it in a word processor. No arrow board, no strobes, no flares, just hazards and a cheap tripod with nothing on it. One of the men pointed to my passenger door and did a little roll it down pantomime. I stayed in my lane another quarter mile and used a wide gore area to stop where my driver's A-pillar and mirror frame gave me steel between us. Habit. Window down 2 inches, both hands visible. The closer one came back with a clipboard he never looked at. He kept his eyes on my face. "Evening, Jenna," he said, like we were already acquainted. His vest was new. His work boots weren't scuffed where they'd be if he climbed steps all day. "My name is on my authority and my bills. It isn't on the side of my truck." "Unit number?" I asked. "Supervisor name?" He smiled like I'd told a joke and tapped the clipboard. "Safety Division. Quick inspection. We can skip the formalities if you've got somewhere to be." On the CB, someone keyed a hot mess of a trooper voice. Wrong cadence, wrong terms. "Eastbound tractor at mile marker 42. Comply with roadside inspection," he said, stressing the wrong word, then doubled it with an echo like a phone held near a speaker. The man at my window pointed again at the passenger side and said, "Does that door stick? We can talk over here." My passenger door doesn't stick. What sticks is the part of me that won't step out into a place someone else picked. I told him if it was an inspection, I'd be happy to take the official bay at the scale up ahead. He said the scale was closed. I could see the sign. It said open. I put on my 4-ways and rolled away slow, careful not to hit their cones. He shouted something I didn't catch and jogged to the pickup. It didn't pull out behind me. It turned onto the frontage road the wrong way for the ramp, like it had somewhere else to be. At the scale, I went around back and parked by the office. The sergeant on duty listened without interrupting. He asked the same questions I would have. Legitimate vehicle numbers, markings, lighting, radios. Then he sent a unit to clear the ramp. They found the 3 cones and a strip of reflective tape stuck to the guardrail at windshield height-eye level marker for someone standing where they'd been standing. 2 sets of prints in the gravel. Work boots and soft shoes, no pickup. I stayed there for a while, did my paperwork, drank station coffee, waited to feel dumb or safe, whichever came first. Dispatch pinged me that the receiver wanted an ETA. I rolled on. At the next big truck stop, 2 exits down, a gray pickup idled at the back of the car lot, tucked where cameras look past you. My dash cam caught it when I reviewed the card later. In the moment, it was just a shape with a light bar that never flashed. A different guy in a vest walked the trailer rows with his hands in his pockets, head down. He didn't look at plates. He looked at the tails where nobody has a camera good enough. I fueled, paid inside because my card reader had started acting sticky, and came back out to a strip of adhesive on my passenger step like a sticker had been pulled off. On the right rear mud flap, a diagonal scuff shaped like the edge of a cone. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe cones travel on their own. I keep my bills in a hard clipboard that snaps shut. I don't leave it on the dash. When I got to the receiver's lot pre-dawn, the guard wanted the load number and consignee name. I popped the board and found a thin ballpoint circle around the consignee with an arrow and a time window written in a hand that wasn't mine. When I parked to break the seal, the circle bothered me more than it should have. We unload by appointment, not by whoever finds us on a ramp. The receiver took me early. On the dock, I watched the gray pickup pass the road beyond the chain link. It didn't slow. It didn't need to. I slept light in the bobtail line. Window cracked an inch. The air smelled like wet cardboard and grease. At 03:22, a vehicle eased along the road again, with its headlights off, coasted to the corner, and stopped long enough to do nothing, which is a kind of something. The next night, same corridor, different county. I stopped at a rest area because my hours were trash, and the next fuel was 40 minutes too far. I backed against the grass and let the reefer hum settle into a rhythm you can count sleep to. At 01:11, 2 knocks on my passenger side, low like a ring hitting the lower panel. Not hard, enough. I hit the horn and popped the door latch, not to open, just to make the sound. A shadow stepped out of the mirror slice and walked fast toward the car side of the lot. In the grass by my step in the morning, the trampled line showed somebody had stood where the window is weakest if you're looking for eyes. I called the same sergeant and told him it was starting to feel like a pattern, not a night. He logged it and gave me the simple tests he teaches rookies when they roll up on improvised stops. Look for proper spacing and count of cones. Look for a crashed truck or aero board. Look for markings that aren't decals someone could print. Listen for language. Real troopers don't say skip the formalities. They like the formalities because the formalities are the point. 2 days later, westbound this time, the pickup came back in my mirrors at dusk, ran my blind spot like it paid rent there, then took an exit to nowhere. Back on 19, the radio filled with dead air and a breath timed to mine. Then a name set a hair off mine again, but said by someone who had read it more than heard it. I didn't answer. I kept my lane and my distance and my rules. The last piece, the one that still sits in my stomach, is small. At a fuel island outside Shamrock, I noticed a hairline crescent of chalk on my left steer. Low enough you'd miss it unless you're looking for rocks. It matched the way tire guys marked the checked position, only nobody had checked me. The shape lined up perfectly with where a hand would touch if someone wanted to leave a "this one" that would wash away in the next puddle. Maybe it was a child's finger. Maybe it was mine. I wiped it with a wet towel and it took 2 passes. There isn't an arrest to end this. I kept the strip of adhesive on the step until dust ate the tack. I kept a photo of the fake stencil. I kept the scuff on the mud flap until I replaced it. The report reads, suspicious persons impersonating inspectors, cones recovered, no suspect. The lesson is invisible. I don't let anyone walk me to the passenger side. I don't sleep where I can't see a lane. I take the official bay if somebody wants to talk inspection. If a voice on the radio has all the words and none of the music, I keep my hands visible and my A-pillar between us, and I don't move to where somebody else is pointing.